Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome to the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman. Everyone, I hope that you didn't miss us too much yesterday. We of course played a best of, and that's okay because I think that was one of our favorite shows in a long time, where we talked to the vice president of research for IBM's quantum computer division. And it was a very interesting, enlightening interview where we talked about the basics of quantum computers and, where the technology fits into the landscape, how long can we expect quantum computers to be in the labs and not in our lives. And we even talked about the new System 1 that they just developed. So if you missed that, then you can go back and find it in the podcast, but that was yesterday's show. And today, though, we are, of course, going to jump right into it with Nathan Evans, Popzara magazine. And of course, we have a lot of different articles, a lot of different topics, and we're not going to be able to get them all, but we will include them in the show notes. So before we get to Nathan Evans, let's go ahead and mention computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including a link to the show notes. You'll find any articles that we do, any videos that we show, anything that we talk about here on today's program, you can find at computeramerica.com. And of course, while you're there, be sure to check out the articles. We have some reviews going up here soon. And on top of that, of course, the live video stream, which you can find at twitch.tv/Computer America. Okay, there's all the self-branding. That's how you find everything. If this is your first time listening to Computer America, where we have had on Nathan Evans, you're in for a treat. It's always a lot of fun talking to him and just having a good conversation about a lot of different, kind of pop culture, but at the same time, tech-oriented stories. A lot of them that I wanted to get to. And half of them his list, half of them my list, but I think they're all going to be great. And let's go ahead and get him on. So as I said before, Nathan Evans, managing editor at Popzara magazine. You can find more at popzara.com, where they do movie reviews, game reviews, they do tech reviews, and so much more. So everyone, welcome onto the program once again. Nathan, how you doing?
Ben, you say tomato, I say tomato, but we'll make it work.
Oh, but there's a lot of tomatoes going on in the news that I'm looking forward to discussing with you. Some of them we haven't, actually a lot of them, because luckily, and I say luckily, but I enjoy it when we have regular guests on the show and the interviews go long. But that means that this week, like in the past 7 days, we have done like 2 news stories. So a lot of what we're going to talk about today is the first time we're mentioning them on the program. So a lot of new ground to cover. And
cool.
Before we get to news and before we get to all that good stuff, why don't you go ahead and tell the nice folks out there what you do at Popzara magazine?
Well, what I do is sit back and collect paychecks. And no, I don't collect paychecks. But no, Popzara, as your listeners know, and at least one very dedicated listener knows very well, we are a pop cultural phenomenon. And by phenomenon, I mean a website that deals a little bit of like a bazaar of things. A little bit of movies, a little bit of gaming, tech, culture, books, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, without all the fuzz, without all the noise, getting straight to the point. I think we do a pretty good job, and I think the readers like it. I think the listeners, they appreciate it. I know you do, because you keep coming back for more.
Of course. Yeah, no.
We're a buffet. A nice buffet, a nice cheap buffet with nice big plates.
Exactly. And of course, you guys are also getting into podcasts more and more. I see that. And it's just, you put out a lot of great content. And of course, it meshes, melds, mixes so nicely with what we do here on Computer America. We really enjoy your monthly visits. So with that being said, why don't we go ahead and just kind of get started with some of the topics. And because you are our guest, I'll go ahead and let you have first dibs.
Well, so many to choose from. Well, why don't we just get the news that made me a little happy? Every once in a while, some corporate news makes me smile. And because we both share love for gaming, or at least whatever gaming is today, let's talk about Nintendo. Nintendo of America is getting a new president. Nintendo of America is getting a new U.S. president, I should say. You're familiar with the saga of Reggie Fils-Aimé, who's guided Nintendo for the past decade plus. He's retiring. He's going off to do other things, and his successor will be a man by the name of Doug Bowser.
Yeah, the last name certainly created waves. So
you know what that means? That means the villains win. So for those who don't know, Bowser is the name of Mario's nemesis, and now he's heading Nintendo. So sorry, Mario.
But
you lose.
And of course, Reggie Fils-Aimé, he's not he is not hated. Like, people like him. He did all of the Nintendo Directs and things like that.
Yes. He is one of the two people that I would say is responsible for a lot of the goodwill we still have in video games, and I'll explain. He's corporate driven. I think he used to work at Frito-Lay at one point, so take that what as you can. But it was him and the Japanese president, Taro Iwata, who passed away a few years ago, sadly, who really helped keep the spirit of the video game shenanigans alive. If you we've talked about this before. If you watch if you watch press shows from anybody else that's not Nintendo, they tend to be a little corporate driven, a little overproduced, a little mechanical. They talk about 3D technology and silicon graphics and CPUs and whatever. And Nintendo talks about yarn and balloons and bananas.
That bunch of bananas.
There's something there that just, regardless what you think about Nintendo as a company, you kind of want to cheer them on. You kind of like that.
So, and by the way, this kind of came out of left field. I had not heard, in 6 months he's going to retire. This just kind of was announced. Any indication that he's switching companies, or he's just retiring altogether?
He's young. And he's not a Bill Gates. I mean, let's be clear. Reggie is a hired gun. He was hired because of his savvy in helping restructure companies. And people forget, before Reggie joined the team, Nintendo was in a very different place. They were I don't want to say they were on the outskirts, but they were on the way of becoming irrelevant in a modern gaming atmosphere that was dominated by companies like Microsoft and Sony. And what they did is he was very aggressive. And for those who don't know, he's very famous for implementing the Japanese backed strategy of Blue Ocean strategy, which is to find new ways to be creative in a congested marketplace. For example, when you go to Best Buy, or you go to Walmart, or you go to any retail store, when you go into the game aisle or the food aisle, the way items are positioned is not random. Those positions are paid for by companies. Yeah. Did you know this?
Where
position
people
is important.
where people will pay more for the product to be eye level as opposed to on the floor, where no one will go pick it up.
Yes. And Nintendo was so hands off with their retail strategy that before Reggie, Nintendo products were in the backs. They were always in the back corners where you couldn't see them. And the Microsoft products, the Sony products were always up front. Reggie changed that, and he basically called their bluff. If you don't give Nintendo more priority spacing, you're not getting any of our products. And when you're facing a product like the Wii, which was the greatest thing ever, selling thing ever at the time, you listen. You have to do this, and he knew this. And so he leveraged that, and he helped make Nintendo much, much more competitive, but never competitive to the point of sterility, the way like the Microsoft and Sony heads would do. You felt like with Reggie, that this is a man who probably goes home like everybody else, who probably strips down to his Speedos like everybody else, and oils himself up like everybody else, like a normal guy. Right? We all do this. We all go home and oil ourselves up with canola oil, and that's what made him so relatable. And I don't know about you, Ben, but I like to relate to my people. And so, wait, where was I? I lost me at oils. So,
you lost me at canola, but you're right.
But coupled with Iwata, they would do these Nintendo Direct shows, and they became very personable and a lot more pleasant than what you'd get elsewhere. And he'll be missed. Like I said, he's not essential to the Nintendo DNA, but he will be missed. He's been a very fun character.
Yep, and then of course Doug Bowser, according to this article again, which we'll throw up in the show notes, but an EA executive, but that just means he knows the industry. I mean, like you said, it's not the end of anything at Nintendo, but it's just another personality. That's just you'll probably see him. I would be completely surprised because you're right. He's not really of retirement age or what you consider retirement age. He says he's gonna go level up with his wife, family, and friends, but that just means that he's gonna be job hunting, and we'll undoubtedly see him again.
I hope I don't see him in a competitive market because do you remember the spokesperson? Was it for Verizon? The guy with the nerdy guy with the glasses?
Yeah.
Remember him?
And then he went to Sprint, I think, and started bashing.
Yeah, he went to
his
Sprint,
old position.
but he went to Sprint very specifically to become the alternative. He's like, hey, can you hear me now? I'm at Sprint. It was lame. It didn't work. And if Reggie were to join like Microsoft, because Microsoft's in a buying spree right now for anyone with a video game history. I don't think it would work because it never does. He's very specifically linked to Nintendo that I don't think that necessarily translates into another market.
I think that Activision Blizzard could use someone like him, but that's just speculation.
Probably. No, I agree with you. I think they could use somebody. They could use anybody other than who they have right now.
Right.
So.
Well,
that's not fun.
So there you go. But that's definitely a good article. Now, because you picked that one, I wanted to, some of these, they may be a little bit older, but I wanted to get these in here. And one of these, I think, was published, 2 days ago. But I at least wanted your reaction because we had not done this on the show. And sure. Let's see. Let's go ahead and open this in another tab where, there we go, duplicate. Now, Nike, you know them. They recently had a big shoe blowout. That's,
I saw this, yeah.
But not the big blowout on on the NBA court, and people were complaining about their shoes not being up to snuff. This one was their self-lacing smart shoe, which Back to the Future. I think everyone knows the or was it Back to the Future 2, where the shoe would smart lace itself, and everyone was hoping for that. We got that, and then this story comes along where, due to a botched firmware update, which so often, maybe you update the firmware for security purposes for your smart light bulbs or smart fridge or something, and the firmware update goes kaflooey, the technical term, and your light bulbs go out, your fridge stops working, or maybe in this case, your shoes stop functioning.
Your car brakes stop working. It reminds me of the story where Google, when they were doing self-driving cars and they didn't bother putting brakes or steering wheels. And I thought to myself, because to have that much faith in technology requires a level of arrogance and stupidity that is dangerous. And so when I saw the Nike, I didn't send this to you because I didn't know if you would want to talk about it, but I saw it and I thought to myself, well, here we go. Planned obsolescence in shoes.
I don't know if this is planned obsolescence, but this is definitely unplanned marketing
No, I think it's
disaster.
totally planned. Are you kidding? I think this is totally planned. I don't think this was a mistake at all. I think what happens is you're starting to see this encroachment. We call it wearables, right? Where you're going to have wearable clothing, right?
Of course.
So, but how many times have you seen already? I remember a couple of years ago, I had a telephone, an actual landline phone that had Goog 411 on it. Right? It was actually a dedicated Goog 411 button. And that doesn't work anymore because Goog 411 is gone. So that the feature of that phone is useless. So nothing's ever going to bring it back. If you start tying technology into markets like clothing that didn't have it before, then the clothing that becomes dependent or the technology that becomes dependent on this will therefore have a limited lifespan. Like when you have all these Google Watches and Apple Watches, they're fine and everything, but there's no way in hell these Google Watches and smartwatches are going to stay around like a Timex because they require firmware upgrades.
The only thing I can kind of counter that with, and this is something that people are doing with the Bixby button on Samsung phones, where and I read an entire forum where like Bixby, that's the thing that I accidentally press when I try to turn the volume down, and it opens for like a second and then I close it. They came out with apps that are available in the App Store. Anyone out there? Here's a fun fact if you didn't know. I think it's like Bye Bixby or something like that. You could probably find it in the store. Anyways, it lets you remap the Bixby button to anything you want.
Sure.
So maybe if you wanted to remap it to a favorite application that you normally use, then there you go. Maybe you could have software updates, firmware updates that could change the functionality of defunct features, but You're right. I mean, you're adding complexity to a market that was like shoes.
You're right.
Very
Exactly.
not
You're adding
complex.
complexity, but you're also adding a tether line, because as you see, if the function of the clothing depends on the company servicing the product, once the company stops servicing the product, it's done. Product's done. Doesn't work anymore.
That's true.
And that's what I'm trying to say is, like, we're overcomplicating things in a way. We're creating new markets, but we're also creating new problems.
So,
and again, this is all planned. This is not accident. They want you to discard this and buy new stuff.
So yesterday was supposed to be our Linux show. I know your feelings on Linux.
Linux.
And by the way, everyone, Linux show should be next Thursday if everything goes according to plan. But I digress. That's actually an area of expertise for the Linux community. Is that and this is becoming more and more rare because companies don't want to do this because they hold patents and things like that. But when services become, just obsolete, the Linux community really likes to take the source code that hopefully they release and they continue to develop it in a public forum.
Well, they recycle it, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that this is something where that they do more and more in the future. When companies stop actively developing something and they say we are no longer interested in keeping things up to date, I hope that they release a source code, that they release it for everyone to use, and then maybe the Linux community could be, maybe your shoes could run on Linux, like things like that could be a solution.
Way to go, Ben. Linux are bottom feeders, just taking off the scraps of Nike. No, but check this out. We talked about Activision a minute ago. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons that caused Activision such problems, it's because they started using games as services. And one of the most gigantic bombs they've ever had was Guitar Hero. And EA had a similar with Rock Band, which you had a proprietary music store, which meant that on top of your Spotify, on top of your Apple Music, on top of your Google Play Music, on top of your Groove Music, on top of all whatever you buy, you had to buy song specifics for one application service, right?
Yep.
And when that went away, your investment went away. You didn't get a refund. And I didn't send this to you either, but there was a story just the other day about prisons. Did you hear about this? A prison was, for some mind-boggling reason, was selling digital music to prisoners. They could buy for like $1.50 a track.
Wow.
And you had some prisoners who were buying like thousands of songs, right? Because what else are you going to do with the money, right?
Right.
And when they switched vendors, all those songs were lost. So all the songs the prisoners had bought were lost, and they had nothing they could do about it. So the problem I have is that when you tie something to a specific thing, like I said, people joke about technology, about how things don't become obsolete. Like the one standard bearer we've had for this entire argument since the dawn of technology was books. Mm-hmm. How books became digital and then they're tied into Amazon. We've seen this happen where Amazon will take books off your Kindle if they have a dispute. You see that happen with satellite televisions where if AMC doesn't agree to this, they'll take AMC off for whatever reason. But now we're going to have it with sneakers. Now we're going to have it with watches. We're going to have it with clothing. I know Google has clothing. We're going to have it with backpacks. We're going to have it where the sanctity of the usefulness of your clothing is now going to depend on the diligence of a company. And that's too much for me to use. I mean, I got to be honest with you. I have problems with that. And this is one of them. Now, Marty McFly would have never put up with this crap. Do you remember the Marty McFly shoes in Back to the Future too?
Yeah, that's
they were cool.
Yeah, and that was really the kind of the first self-tying shoe that I think Nike released. But this is something different. Like this is not the replica collector's edition of these. No, these were supposed to be like baseball players, and they could tighten them on the fly so that they didn't have to relace their shoes every 2 minutes. But here's why maybe planned obsolescence is because that this firmware release was like 3 days after they initially launched. So this was also just bad programming, and that's something you now have to worry about. Bad firmware updates. So.
Well, but every single device you've ever had. Okay, I don't care what it is. Every single device that requires firmware. Now, people love buying old Nintendos. They love buying old VHS players. They love buying old records because they're so divorced from technology. But today, you can't play a video game without logging into a server and accepting a UEL. You can't play a movie without digital rights management. It's tied to network servers. It's tied to connectivity in a way that old stuff wasn't. And what's going to happen is you're going to have this big chasm of inoperability in about 10 years, of which there will be no more boxes of goodies in grandma's attic. There's not going to exist anymore because everything's become peripheral. You have a Spotify or iMusic, Apple Music subscription for 4 years. You amass nothing. You amass nothing with it. Your Xbox Live service goes away. All those free games you got are gone. Same with PS Plus. Same with Game Pass. Same with Netflix. We're collecting nothing, but we're spending more.
Yeah.
And
so I'll say one thing.
It's tied to it. It's all tied to it.
I'll say one thing, and then we'll move on to another topic that you'd like to pick. But I will say that the reason that those boxes of goodies are in grandma's attic is because the companies no longer support them. When you have services that are tied to the cloud, that are tied to continuous updates, maybe grandma's attic, instead of being full of old technology that is no longer updated but still works, maybe we'll just have technology that works all the time because it's continuously supported.
I don't see that happening, though. I mean, in fact, I see everything going the exact opposite. I see companies shutting off services that don't work. They shut off servers. They online things are disconnected. There's been lawsuits threatened, by the way, because of services that were promised. People say, well, you can commit with me, and those services go away. We've even seen it with companies like Microsoft who renege on digital leases for like OneDrive. These companies have not figured out how to do things in perpetuity yet, but they're promising. It's like cell phone companies promising you unlimited service, but then they have really unlimited or truly that's stupid. You know what that's like, Ben?
What's that?
That's like when you're a little kid in the playground and someone says, "You're stupid." Well, you're stupid. Well, you're stupid plus. Well, you're stupid infinity. Well, you're stupid infinity plus. It doesn't work like this. This isn't Avengers. You can't use infinity like that.
Speaking
it's unlimited or it's not unlimited. There's no super unlimited. That's not what unlimited means.
Well, luckily, companies have figured out that they can argue that the meaning of unlimited is very flexible. So we'll see how that works. But
we are in a numerate culture. I'll say that.
So speaking of not being not unlimited, by the way, everyone, Google Plus will be shutting down in about a month. Nathan, this is also an announcement for you.
I don't want to dance on anyone's grave, but good riddance.
Yeah, seriously. But I saw
that too. That's gonna go. That's just there for the lulls.
Google Plus, and I bring that up every week because some people do have photos stored on there that they are nowhere else, and if you have that, then they will be erased when the time finally comes. So there you go. But nothing's forever, even social media. And with that being said, I want you to pick a different topic. Let's go ahead. And we're at 2 topics in, and we're like 20 minutes in. So this is let's
get the big one out of the way because this is the one that's going to jack your SEO stuff up, which I'm helping you out with.
I'm ready.
Let's talk about the Uber data and the Jussie Smollett thing because I think that's important.
We have not, and just to be clear, we have not mentioned anything Jussie Smollett here on the show. But this is important because it's a tech company helping with police investigations, and that's going to be a bigger part of our lives. So
exactly, and like I said, we're not talking the merits of the Jussie Smollett thing. We're basically talking about digital forensics, which I think is more appropriate. First of all, can we just say he's an idiot? And second of all, if you're going to commit crimes, don't write checks. Don't write checks to people when you're committing crimes.
I have said this, just around the dinner table to my family, and it's luckily, thanks to technology, criminals are idiots, and on top of that,
true.
Technology makes that so much easier to track down. So
we talked about this before, like people who film themselves on Facebook Live and everything.
I know.
It's like
doing crimes.
Technology doesn't make people dumber; it just brings the dumbness out.
Right. So
anyway, let's talk about Jussie Smollett real quick. So basically, we all know. Well, if you followed the case at all, he basically said the gimme is that he was on his cell phone when this supposed attack happened, and then the police wanted his cell phone, and he refused to give it, which is always a red flag. Now, you know about this more than I do, Ben. Is that cell phones are a great way to geo-track yourself, and you can ping towers, and you can ping locations, and basically it will help solve the crime.
Beyond
right?
that, and sorry to jump in here real quick, but beyond that, not even just location, because they can triangulate you based on your cell towers, and he was like in the middle of, Chicago or New York, one of these large cities, plenty of cell towers to ping his location, but on top of that, it would have been call logs, it would have been who he was talking with to corroborate with the story. A lot of data was available, but none of it was given.
Well, and so what it turned out to be, Uber. that data collected from Uber. And the reason this is important is because both Uber and Lyft are in talks to release their first IPO. I do think that Lyft is going to have the advantage. Everything I hear is that Lyft's going to be the first one to do IPO. This is going to be interesting. So, but if you follow this all right, what do you feel like? You've taken Ubers before, right? Lyfts?
Yeah, of course. When I went out to CES, Ubers and Lyfts were my exclusive mode of transportation. Right. Exactly.
And unlike some companies we've seen, like with Apple, Uber is more than happy to provide tracking information for you. I mean, that's part of their service. That's part of their network.
Apple is more than happy to share information on you as well, as long as it's within their servers. Like if you use the iCloud, they will turn over anything in the iCloud to investigators.
They position themselves as someone who won't do that, but we all know they do that. And
they won't push an update to your phone to allow law enforcement to get into the data on your personal device. But if you give your data to the iCloud, they'll turn that over in a heartbeat. And so will Microsoft. So will everyone.
Yeah, there are no good people in this game, in this privacy game. The only thing is, don't do stupid stuff and don't commit crimes, and you won't have anything to worry about.
Right.
Well, you'll have less to worry about. You could be framed, but that's very unlikely. So, or in most cases, you're someone stupid like Jussie Smollett, who basically left enough digital breadcrumbs to track himself so thoroughly, that it's kind of mind-boggling. And I'm wondering, forget all the shenanigans he did with the culture. I'm wondering what this is going to do for technology as far as data location tracking and everything, because you don't really think about this in ways you used to. You know what I mean? That you could be tracked using the mechanisms to get around. We always say, place a call, grab an Uber, look at CCTV cameras. But no one, I'll be honest with you, no one brought up Uber. No one brought up Uber during the investigation. That was new.
Well, Uber is just one service out of dozens a person may have running on their phone. So it'd be kind of like, kind of guessing maybe, you were using Google Maps. But I will say, did you see the reporting? I believe it was from the New York Times. They did a huge, kind of example story of how fine-grained and detailed the data that you send to Apple, to Google, to Facebook, to all these different companies when you have their services running in the background. And they showed, like, let's say a particular school teacher, they knew her route to work, they knew how long she was at work, which way she took home, where she stopped, where her gym was, where her friends were, things like that. They were able to tell all that through anonymous data points, quote unquote, and hey, it turns out she's the only one that goes to all those places.
I will tell you one thing. I'll get you beat. You don't even have to do that type of forensic analysis. Just let them do it. Do you have Google on you have an iPhone, right?
Right.
Okay, I'm just going to assume if you have an Android phone, it's native on there with Google Maps. Mm-hmm. They track every footstep you take. And the forensics that you can collect, the data you can collect it from analysis from just from your phone, includes things like you said, stopping. It includes every time you lift the phone up. It includes the accelerometer motions you do.
Apple recently started to like every Sunday they'll send you a report on how long you use your phone, what applications you're using.
The FaceTime. What do they call it? The screen time.
It's screen time.
But every time you go to Walmart, every time you go to Walgreens, or every time you go to a store that has the free Wi-Fi, those are data collection centers. And what you're really doing is, when you agree, is that they're siphoning off user data. They know where you're standing. They know what product you're looking at. They can determine all this stuff to such a fine degree that the stuff that you would think is meaningless, they use it for commercialization from products. They can tell exactly what you've been looking at and everything. It's pretty scary, by the way. It's pretty scary, but it's kind of cool at the same time.
So I kind of bring that up because you're saying that, maybe the application that you use is going to hand over data. Well, it's not even so much like, you can know your travel history with Uber, but when you take all of the data that is being sucked out of you through your phone, they're going to have a lot more. This story is and not to bring China too far into it, but what's happening in the U.S., this is the beginning, and then what's happening in the U.S. is just a fraction of what's going to happen in other countries that are much more, kind of government-centric with their data.
This is just the beginning.
Oh, and I will say that there's music playing in the background. So Nathan Evans, Popzara, everyone will be right back. And I think we're going to, maybe cap off this Uber data and how it helped actually break this case. But then when we come back, we have a lot more stories, including SpaceX and no other way to put it, Jews in space, and a lot more, including China's blockbuster movie, The Wandering Earth. Everyone, we'll be right back. More Nathan Evans, Popzara, more Computer America right after this. Stay tuned.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
Welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour as we continue on here. And everyone, we are continuing on with, of course, Nathan Evans, Popzara Magazine, popzara.com, if you want to check it out. And we're just, going over the news of the day and the past couple of days. And Nathan, of course, I wanted you to put a cap on Uber data helped ID, the whole Jussie Smollett thing. And any last thoughts before we move on?
My last thoughts are my first thoughts. Don't do stupid stuff. And if you really need a sandwich at 2:00 in the morning during the coldest day of the year, Grubhub or Uber Eats. Have that sandwich come to you.
Smart. I like that. Okay, so with that being said, why don't we go ahead and let you pick the next one? Lots of different ones, and some of them touchy, some of them are like, okay. But hey, your call. What are we going to next?
Well, I do want to save the self-promotion thing about the Oscars to the end, if we can do that, because that's a fun thing. And I think we should always end on a fun note. Sure. Did you see the trailer for Jordan Peele's Twilight Zone?
I didn't. I like the guy. He is a great director. I've not seen the Twilight Zone anything. Okay.
Are you a fan of the Rod Serling Twilight Zone?
No. And don't get me wrong.
Pause this and we'll resume in a month when he's watched none.
So
you've never seen Twilight Zone?
I've seen so much pop culture that I feel like I've seen Twilight Zone because every time I get like a reference to it, I'm like, okay, that's Twilight Zone. But no, I've never seen the original.
Okay. I believe it's on Netflix or Hulu or some combination of the two. So please watch it. Please rectify that. Rod Serling was a genius. Not only was he a genius, he was iconic in the way that he was able to create episodic television when television was still, in its earliest infancy, not earliest infancy, but in the stages, 60s. This anthologized sci-fi / horror / reality plus heightened sense of original stories on television. And if you watch it now, it's fun because not only do you get a well-written, well-directed show, but you will recognize many of the stars who would go off and become superstars. And certain episodes of the show would become iconic in, like you said, the culture. Like, for example, the one with William Shatner and the gremlin on the airplane.
Yeah.
Or the famous one with Milton Berle where he's the last man on Earth and his glasses break. But there's
I think there
so
was one that,
many others.
Like everything was like pigs or something like that, and yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic. And it's so and we, as television viewers, we love this type of series. We love anthologies, but they tend to go out of favor after a while. And we're right now in the middle of a new anthology renaissance, started, I believe, by Black Mirror on BBC and Netflix, which is fantastic, which is still amazing people with things like the Choose Your Own Adventure episode just last year.
Bandersnatch.
And so, what is it?
Bandersnatch.
Bandersnatch. And now we have the return of the King Daddy from all the Twilight Zone itself with Jordan Peele, who's hot off the board for directing his first theatrical film, Get Out. He's got another one coming out. I forget what it's called, but it involves scissors. But what's going to be interesting, though, they've rebooted Twilight Zone many times, most famously with Forrest Whitaker. But Jordan Peele will host the show the way Rod Serling would. Rod Serling not only wrote the show and what he would do is he'd bookend it. He'd be in the show at the beginning, and he'd always give you the synopsis and the metaphor and the lesson learned, if any. And it was fun, and he was integral to that. And if I can just put a little self-promotion here.
Sure.
Rod Serling was the one who actually wrote the original screenplay for Planet of the Apes. And while they never used his screenplay, they used elements of it to create the movie with Charlton Heston. And I actually talked to comedian Dana Gould on the Popzara podcast a couple months ago. Dana Gould being the comedian and the voice of Gex the Gecko, It's Tail Time, wrote for The Simpsons. And what he did is he took Sterling's original screenplay and turned it into a graphic novel. It's fantastic. And it's fun to watch. It's fun to revisit 1960s sci-fi because it was so rich and textured and so laced with paranoia of the Cold War and, the nuclear age and all of this. We don't really get that anymore now. Things are way too nuanced now. It's not as much fun. So, but as the first footage of the new Twilight Zone, which is going to be unfortunately, it's going to be on CBS's streaming app, which means there's going to be a lot of bootlegs. They just like start the Star Trek Discovery show. It looks good. It looks good. And I hope it meets the expectations. I know nothing else about it other than it's going to have famous people in it. It's going to have people like John Cho, Kumail Nanjiani, people you recognize already from everything else. But we'll see how it happens. It could be a fun sandbox to play in.
I've enjoyed when other really well-regarded television shows come back with a new face, and they come back with kind of fresh ideas. One of mine is Carl Sagan and the Starship of the Imagination, or whatever it's called, and came back with the creator of Family Guy. Man, I'm totally drawing a blank on the creator.
You're talking about Seth MacFarlane?
Seth MacFarlane.
And not only that, but you're also talking about what's his face?
Cosmos, right? And Neil deGrasse Tyson as well.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, who may or may not be on our TV screens for much longer. But I will say this, Carl Sagan's amazing. If you haven't had a chance to watch the original series. And I think he's the one who popularized the term billions and billions of years ago. Billions and billions. But no, I love that idea. And I think as people, we love anthologies because it allows us to have a bite-sized something. It's so often we see TV shows get turned into 3-hour episodes or whatever, and they're just too long.
There are so many, let's see, there was like Lost, there was like Breaking Bad, which don't get me wrong, I've heard great things, but I never got into them because I heard about them about season 3, and I'm like, who has the time? I totally agree. Twilight Zone, looking forward to it. And by the way, just real quick before we switch topics, actually this is switching topics. Recently just got a comment on one of our videos from like 2 years ago. I'm not sure how, people, and we talk about the right to repair and things like that. And someone accused Computer America of working with the Chinese. Everyone, and that we were a product of Skull and Bones.
That's funny. Yeah.
So
that's very funny.
So Computer America.
Are you working with the Chinese? I order Chinese once a week.
Not even high in salt, can't have it. But Computer America is not working with the Chinese, and we are not a product of Skull and Bones. So
wait, can I make a PSA for you?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, Computer America, Hao Bu Hao, Shiba, Ben Dan, sorry. See, I'm trying to say delicately in Chinese that the person's a fool.
Okay.
Ben Dan. Okay. This show has nothing to do with Chinese, despite what I just said. So nothing to do, and Russia either.
Right. So and so with that being said, anyone out there who wants to reach out and comment to Computer America,
very topical. 2 years.
Well, I think the right to repair is pretty topical, but I don't know why that comment just struck me. It was just left on our YouTube channel. We're like, that's interesting. First time I've ever been accused of working with the Chinese, but
it won't be the last.
It won't be the last because China's going to be moving into tech and movies, and actually let's actually turn that into a segue. China's blockbuster, The Wandering Earth. You included this, and I've never heard of The Wandering Earth. What is this?
Okay, The Wandering Earth is, I believe, the biggest budget Chinese movie of all time, or if not, it's close. It's also one of the biggest blockbusters of all time. I believe it's the second biggest blockbuster, second only to Wolf Warrior 2, right? Which stars the same actor.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't seen the movie yet. I've seen trailers of it. It looks to me it looks generic,
right? And clearly it's not for our market. I mean, China. That's the market.
Well, that's the funny thing. You see, that's the funny thing is these movies make a lot of money, right? These movies make a lot of money. And what's the guy's name? Wu Jing. And have you seen Wolf Warrior 2? It's pretty good.
No, I have not.
It's pretty good. It's made so much money. Not even translated money. It's made so much money. It's made more money than Black Panther made in America, right? And here's the thing about it. When you look at a movie like this is very interesting. Something is happening in Hollywood and the world cinema that we need to take a look at because we got the Oscars coming up here, which we'll talk about later, is that we keep hearing words like diversity, if we have more diversity. And what diversity has meant to movies is that you need some representation of different cultures and different races and ethnicities and genders and all this stuff. And that's totally fine. But
not really. But and just real quick, I mean, when they say that, so far what I've seen, this is kind of getting into the pop culture side of it more than tech side of it. But diversity just means you need some of that Chinese capital and a Chinese face so that you can sell it to the Chinese market.
That's the other side of it is that there have been naysayers that say that Chinese markets don't like too much diversity. And there's some evidence of this. So when you watch a movie when you see a movie like The Wandering Earth, if you see the trailer, not very diverse. Not a lot of diversity in that trailer. And the movie's made bank. And so when you look at countries that are producing big blockbusters like China or India? Japan or Bombay, they tend to be very nationalistic. They tend to be very, very much focused on the target group there. But in America, we don't have that. And what's been happening is that America's dominance in exporting cinema has lessened to a distressing level.
Yeah.
And when you look at if you look at the biggest movie in America last year, it was Black Panther. Black Panther is very similar to The Wandering Earth. Is that just demographically speaking, it was very much made for an audience, and it not only did it meet that audience, it expanded past. And I'm thinking what's going to happen is when we're going to get these Chinese funded movies, not just Chinese funded American movies, but Chinese funded Chinese movies. It'll be interesting to see how they play out here.
There was another movie. It was called The Wall or something like that. And
exactly. Didn't do very well.
It's where you take some of the biggest names in Hollywood, you write them the fattest check that you've ever written, and you make a Chinese movie and sell it to the American audience because it had Tom Cruise or something like that in it, but it was still very much
it was Matt Damon on that one.
Matt Damon, but you try to sell it to both audiences. Didn't do it too well. So I think you're onto something here where trying to blend the two audiences isn't something, but maybe just really focus on.
Did you see Dragon Blade a few years ago with Jackie Chan?
No.
You got to watch Dragon Blade. Dragon Blade is the most ridiculous movie ever made. It is. At the time, it was the highest budgeted Chinese movie of all time. I think it still might be, starring Jackie Chan, right? John Cusack and Adrian Brody, in a historical fictionally historical universe where the Chinese army met the Romans. And they all got together to battle to create this city of harmony. It's ridiculous. It's such a stupid movie. It's so entertaining. And the acting is so over the top, especially Adrian Brody, Oscar-winning Adrian Brody, who gives it his all, who gives his all as the bad guy, hoping to fight for his country, while Jackie Chan plays the benevolent peace warrior who can't kill. And it's just a disaster. But you see,
I've heard this huge overarching kind of moral quandary that I think Hollywood is fast approaching, where we've talked about the Chinese government and how they feel about morality and how they what was it? Essentially, it's going to amount to like a kind of like a culture war, where what we consider appropriate in America, and that can be everything from violence to romance to blood, blood, gore, whatever. And what we consider appropriate, that's not what the Chinese feel is appropriate.
No, exactly. They're nationalists too. Like, let's be honest here. Movies, there are rules. We don't want to get into it, but there are rules and regulations in Chinese cinema, and even guiding the release of movies, where certain periods of time foreign movies are not allowed to be played in the country. And I promise you, if you watch Wandering Earth, there's going to be nationalism in the movie. There's going to be, which we would call patriotism, but in China, because they're socialists.
Just like Dragonblade that you just described, I mean, the Chinese character is sticking to a higher ideal. You don't kill, you're very altruistic.
Exactly. It's very Chinese. It's very Chinese. But I will say this, can I have final thoughts?
Go for it.
And I don't mean to be offensive by saying we don't want diversity. That's perfectly fine. But I don't think diversity is the right word. I think the right word is variety. So if you decide, let's say you and your girlfriend want to go out and eat, and you say, do you want Chinese food or do you want Italian food? And if you said, let's go Italian, and you went there, and instead of Italian food, they had like squid, and they had lobster. Like, fusion. You would be upset because you wanted Italian food that night. Now, there's nothing wrong with lobster and squid, but you didn't go there for that. You went there for Italian. And I think when you start to see these more, not ethically, but culturally pure movies that are more representative, like Black Panther, or in America we had Crazy Rich Asians, when you start seeing this, there's more of an audience, because they want a more distilled thing. They want something a little more flavorful. And
it's more authentic. It's more authentic.
It is more authentic, and I think a lot of people who claim they want the rainbow of diversity and everything, even they think, I think deep down, want a more authentic experience that reflects how life really is, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's racist or insensitive, but it's just more authentic. And I will tell you this: at some point, one of these movies is going to break through, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon did almost 20 years ago, broke through. But we're going to have one major breakthrough, and I don't know what that's going to be, but it's going to happen probably within our lifetime. And it's going to change things in a way I don't think we're like the Beatles, how they came over to America from the 60s. We're going to have one of these cultural imports really hit hard. And I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to happen.
Rush Hour 4. I'm calling it now. It's going to happen. So
we can only hope.
With that being said, I think it's time to. All right, so I have something lined up. Let me see if this actually plays in the right place, because and one of the reasons that I brought up the YouTube comment was because I navigated to YouTube. Let's see if this plays in the background.
Jews in space!
Woo! Mel Brooks.
Yep. I can play it before I Mel Brooks money. Protecting the Hebrew race. Jews in space. There we go. Now, I play that, and Mel Brooks, one of the funniest freaking directors I've ever seen. But I play that because there is a story here, and this is something I wanted to squeeze in before the end of the show. But SpaceX, you know them, Elon Musk. I know that you are a huge fan, Nathan, of Elon Musk.
I think history has proved me correct.
Obviously. But SpaceX launches the first private moon lander on Israel's behalf. That's right. SpaceX, they will be landing a lander on the moon, and this is from the Google's Lunar X Prize. And let's see, so Israel's robotic spacecraft named Bearsheet was created by a nonprofit group called Space IL, so Space Israel, is the first private moon lander and was previously a finalist for whatever. So now they're going to be landing it on the moon.
I love this. I love these stories.
Perfect.
Make me so happy.
I was going to ask you, obviously the Chinese, speaking of the Chinese again, they recently took some photos of the backside of the moon, of the dark side of the moon. There has been a lot of talk about NASA going back to the moon. There's been a lot of talk about other private organizations.
Space Force,
all that's kind of like a space defense thing. But I think India has something that they're doing. A lot of different countries are looking at the moon, looking at space travel, things like this. How do you feel about that? Just real quick.
Well, I love it. I love it because we now have a new battle. We now have a new intellectual quote unquote war. We used to call it the space war, where Americans and the Russians would vie to be who's going to do it first. And going back to movies for a second, last year we had that movie called First Man, which didn't do very good, but there was a lot of talk about it being an American accomplishment versus an international accomplishment, which is total malarkey. It was a total American accomplishment. And because when you have countries putting their best foot forward and their best technology, their best minds, their best engineers, their best mathematicians, you create competition. And human beings are built for competition, right? Mm-hmm. And when you add nationalism to it, Americans versus the Chinese versus the Japanese versus the Indians, these countries are all going to do their best, hopefully, to get someone to the moon or to get a spacecraft to the moon.
The Japanese, that's who it was. And sorry to jump in here, but the Japanese were the one who landed on
the asteroid.
The asteroid, yes.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's great.
That's amazing. That's like when you watch the news today in America, and with all due respect, when you watch the news, it's so inundated with nonsense and politically correct nonsense. Here we are doing accomplishments that people couldn't even dream of, and these should be. Again, I go back to First Man. Where landing someone on the moon and going to space was something that brought everyone together in the spirit of hopefulness. And that doesn't work anymore. We're not hopeful when we land things on astronauts on the moon, but I wish we were. Because that's such positive competition that we're reaching beyond the pearly gates of the Earth's atmosphere into space, where we have to cooperate, where we can't bring our pettiness outside the ozone layer.
Oh, we can. We can.
We can try, but we really don't. Like, have you noticed every time we get past that, we have space stations, people get along, people living up in space. It's close to utopia, except for you pee in bottles, and which might be utopia for some people. But I think it's fantastic. I do. Is Richard Branson going up yet? Because it seems like he'd be the first one.
Richard Branson, I think he said that sometime at the end of this year, he's hoping to start taking tourists to the edge of space. So, and I think he's saying it's something like $35,000 gets you a trip to space.
Can I be honest with you? The way people talk about Elon Musk is how I feel about Branson.
Oh yeah.
Like Branson to me is the coolest guy on the planet. Branson is a guy who's a billionaire, doesn't need to, but travels in balloons. Doesn't need to, just wants to. That's like an old school, like colonialist like what we used to call the explorers, where he would just do wacky things, and he's probably going to die of it some way, but he's going to go out living. And I think
he does seem
what's left in space.
He does seem like the kind of guy that's going to do like a new 100 Days Around the Earth or the race. He does seem like one of the characters that's going to do that.
Let me be honest with you, Ben. Let me be honest with your audience. You got to go up to Mars. You got to spend 6 months on a rocket. Who would you rather go with, Elon Musk or Branson? Seriously, it's not even a choice.
Well,
it's not even a choice.
Definitely not Mark Zuckerberg. So let's put it that way.
No, definitely not. Exactly. Like that's one thing we can all agree on.
Okay.
Not Zuckerberg.
Now,
and not Jack Dorsey. No way.
So,
not unless he shaves his beard.
So Jack, poor guy. But I will say that there you go. So and maybe I just wanted to hear the Jews in Space theme song again. But that was very interesting to me that Israel's going.
I gotta add something to that, please.
Sure.
I believe that your audience will probably not recognize the Jews in Space song from History of the World Part 1. Mm-hmm. I do think they'll recognize the exact same melody when Mel Brooks made Robin Hood Men in Tights, where he changed it to Men in Tights.
Yeah. I never put that together, but you're right. It is the exact same it is the exact same melody. So
But Jews in Space was fun, and as an added bonus, if you're on YouTube looking up Jews in Space, which is going to send Google's algorithm into overdrive, like, wait a minute, I don't. But no, you also have to look up Pigs in Space from The Muppet Show, which is almost as funny as Jews in Space. They're totally separate, but Jim Henson and Mel Brooks, Ben, what geniuses.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of geniuses, I did want to give you time because you did a podcast, I believe, for for the best movie and, of course, the 91st Oscars. I did not watch anything of the Oscars, so the only thing I heard about the Oscars were that they were going to announce some things off, during commercial, and everyone
it's been controversial, huh?
Out.
First, they're going to do the best popular picture, then they're going to do things off screen, then they're going to have a host, no host. What a mess. So skip the Oscars and go to Popzara instead, because I got a podcast. It's all you need. And what I did is we had a special guest, Joe Layden, who is the critic over at Variety.com. You know Variety, very popular. And he graces us with his presence once again. And we talk about movies. And I have a bunch of new people on the podcast. I have new people like Ethan. I have returning champ Annette. I have a new person, Christian. He's from Australia. He's got a funny accent. You'll love him. And we have a lot of fun. And we all have agreements, disagreements about who should win, who should not win. And it's a long podcast. It's very long.
I was about to say, only 3 hours. Wow. How do you fit it all in?
Well, you fit it all on by smushing it down and compressing it and making sure that the sound quality doesn't suck. But it's a lot of fun, and I think your listeners will like it. And I can tell you right off the bat that I will give you a spoiler what I thought my favorite movies of the year were.
Sure.
Because no spoilers, because they weren't nominated for anything. My favorite movies of 2018, in no particular order, right, are The Death of Stalin and Paddington 2.
Okay, we're going to ignore the juxtaposition of the two, but diversity.
I think Paddington 2 is a masterpiece, and I think Death of Stalin was the funniest, most important movie I saw last year. But I will say none of them are nominated for anything. So, but out of the movies, I'll tell you what though. I'll give you a little spoiler, Ben.
Mm-hmm.
If one particular movie won Best Picture, I would be happy with it, and it probably won't. But I think the movie that, out of all the 10 movies, I know Black Panther's there, Black Klansman's there, Star is Born, Bohemian Rhapsody, all this. But the movie that I think would make me happiest if it won Best Picture, and it's going to really tick off critics, I think Green Book should win Best Picture out of the ones nominated. I think I would be very happy if Green Book won, because Green Book was a very important movie for our culture because I think it makes people feel good. And I think that's a good thing right now. We need more of that.
I'm sorry, I don't even know what Green Book is. I'm so far removed from commercials because I just don't watch commercials. I have not even heard of Green Book, and I'm looking it up right now.
Green Book is a I want to call it a racist road buddy movie, but it is a racist road buddy movie about a budding friendship between an Italian bouncer,
African American pianist,
and a gifted musician who have to travel through the South in the 60s. And Green Book, of course, is named for the basically the green colored style book of I forget the term for it. It was a Negro journal guidebook where they would have black friendly hotels and restaurants.
That's right.
And from the director of Dumb and Dumber and Something About Mary.
Okay.
And it's a fantastic movie that critics think is too simple, but I think they're too simple. I think not every movie about racism needs to be about whips and chains or what we call slavery porn. This movie's funny, and everybody's great in it, and it makes you laugh, and it makes you think, and it makes you feel. And how many movies can do that? And the question is, not many.
There's always that rift that I think they're trying to seal up, at a lot of these award shows for either music or television or movies, that what plays well for an audience or what does well, in the box office or whatever, isn't exactly what gets nominated for the awards. And there's that rift that I think they're trying to solve, but I guess you're saying that this works both ways. Like, this was a good movie on its merits.
This movie didn't do good at the box office either. Let's be clear. Oh. But I do think that there are certain things that movies that don't do well box office, they have a second life, like Shawshank Redemption, A Christmas Story, and so many others. And I think Green Book, once this baby gets on TNT, it's going to stay there for a long time. And I think it's basically like in many ways it's a remake of or it's an update of Driving Miss Daisy, but less patronizing and more funny. And look at Viggo's face. He's so funny in the movie. He's so funny. He got really fat. He's not like Christian Bale who put fat makeup on. He gained a lot of weight to be the fat guy, and that's dedication.
Okay, there you go. And I will say though, Nathan, that we have like a minute left, and I wanted to maybe give you a chance to highlight anything else that you would like to on Popzara. Any recent articles, reviews, anything like that?
Well, there's going to be a lot of game stuff coming out because a lot of games came out. And sometimes that creates a little bit of a backlog when you're a small website, but it's coming. So be prepared. Put us on your RSS feed. Listen in. We got things for Crackdown. We got Anthem. We got Far Cry, the new Far Cry. We got lots of stuff for games. We got lots of book stuff coming out. Lots of books. Lots of stuff. Ben, you know this. It's a smorgasbord.
Christian Sterling actually liked Alita Battle Angel. I heard that people were like, the eyes are off-putting, but everyone I heard that went to go see it actually liked the movie. So
yeah, when people actually see something, they tend to like it. Go figure.
Who knew? So, yep, there you go, popzara.com, and we'll include a link to that in the show notes, but it's pretty easy to remember otherwise. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to Computer America. Let's turn that music down just a little bit. And, of course, everyone, thank you for tuning in to Computer America. Have a great weekend. Thank you. Nathan, thank you for being on the show. We look forward to having you on next month. And we like you, but not that much. So, all right. Yep, there it goes. So, Nathan, until next time, have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, everyone, thank you so much for coming in and joining us. And until next time, have a great day, have a great weekend. Check out some of the podcasts. And in the meantime, everyone, have a great weekend. Bye, everyone.
Bye.